Okay, it is Lucas back again once for the live wire. This time I've got Nicolai from the Danish metal band Merle. How are you, my friend?
Very good, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure
No,
speaking to you.
very excited, very excited. I sort of briefly mentioned this kind of off camera, but I didn't really know much about your band until a couple of weeks ago when the new record dropped across my desk, which is called DREAMCRUSH, which we're going to talk about quite a lot. This album's incredible and I loved it. But what fascinated me more is that I know that the band name is, you don't very commonly see non-English band names. And I know the translation for the band is moth. Is that correct?
Yes, it's that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you guys come across that name? Like what went into the decision to name it after a moth?
Well, I wish I could, tell you a long story about how we came up with that name, and that would be very meaningful. And but I think when this is back in 2013, maybe, and I was doing at the time I was living in the UK, and we were doing some of this early demos for from Odd Become Møl. This is Ken, the drummer from the band, and I, and we just wanted something that sounded Danish and that had, the Danish which is the round O, basically with a line in going through it, which is also very popular with a lot of other metal bands, but it's a Scandinavian or Danish kind of letter. Um, and we thought that that would be really cool to have something that was, in Danish. And we didn't sort of think all the way through with regards to where we would end up, or that it would be really a shit decision with regards to algorithms on Spotify and the internet. Um, Thankfully, it's been working out pretty well. But yeah, and I think the reason for was also sort of naming ourselves after mol or mul or moths in English, is that it can be something that's both a kind of a nuisance and that it can also be something that's really beautiful. And we thought that that was kind of what we were trying to do. So yeah, that was kind of the long story, as long as I could make it.
Yeah, for sure. And I like obviously listening to the music now, I kind of get that in the sense of like not necessarily that the music is annoying, but like mods kind of have this sort of like double like meaning to a point where sometimes they're I guess you don't really like them or whatever, but you there's also like a beauty to it as well that you can find. And I find that especially with this new album, it floats between those kind of mediums very well. But like I said, we're here to talk about Dream Crush. Again, the album's incredible. What are has there been much love from Australia? Like, have you? Because obviously, like I'm Australian and I hadn't really heard of you guys before a couple of weeks ago. Has there been much love from this side of the world for you guys?
I think when we released the previous album, Diorama, we did a couple of interviews, and I can't remember exactly sort of the medias, but yeah, definitely. And I also just came off another interview actually with another Australian interviewer, and I think we have a couple of other that we're kind of trying to schedule um, in this week or next week. So it's really, but we've been anxious to get this record out there and getting reactions and from people. So it's just that is really nice. But yeah, it's interesting to see what would happen in Australia with the music, and we would love to come and play at some point.
For sure. Like I've got something right at the end where I'm like, please come to true because there's some songs in this album I need to hear live, eh? But speaking of Diorama, obviously, before that, you had the debut record, which was Jordan 2018. After I put this on and I had those few spins with it, I ended up jumping backwards into the catalog just to kind of get an idea of where you guys came from. And you can definitely hear the building blocks of what Dream Crush is in those records. And I think both those albums are fantastic as well. So did you feel any pressure to build on those two albums and make something that I think is probably the best stuff you guys have got in your career, keeping in mind I'm a 2 week fan.
Thank you very much, and I'm also very happy with the way Dream Crush ended up sounding like, and I think it's one of my favorite albums. But I also, when we wrote Diorama, that was the best album of the two. Um, so I think, yeah, I haven't felt as much pressure, composing the music for this, and that it had to sound like your or diorama. I think the main thing for Mølle is that we can kind of do whatever we want. That's kind of our motto. And we want to, I specifically didn't want to write the same album twice, so it had to be something new, and that you could feel like there's a progress from the previous album. So I didn't really want it to feel static in that sense. So and thankfully Nuclear Blast was also very open to that idea, that we don't have to push the same kind of sound, and take as long as it takes to write some good music. And yeah, now we're here finally.
For sure. And I've spoken to a lot of people that are on Nuclear Blast, which again I've been super lucky to do. And it seems like Nuclear Blast sort of seem to be a label that are really understanding, I guess, and respectful of like, hey, we want to do something a bit different to what we've done before. And they're like, cool, like, let's go. Like they seem open to it, which is great.
Definitely, they're great people, and they're really great to work with. And so we were just very thankful. And again, it was a dream for us to be signed to Nuclear Blast in the for diorama. So that was crazy, and it was sort of a boyhood dream. So it's just nice to get that kind of reassurance that you what you're doing and thinking of doing is something that they support.
For sure. In the media release for the album, it describes the record as the exploration of the dichotomy of having dreams that sustain you, but also having dreams that oppress you. I think that kind of idea between the light and the dark of the record really shines through with its lyrics, with its instrumentation. And I'd love to kind of get a better perspective, I guess, from your guys and as the creatives creating the music as to what that sort of means to you guys.
With the dichotomy between the light and the dark and the sound.
Yeah. And more so, I guess, having the dreams that sustain versus the dreams that oppress.
Yeah.
That's a line that stuck with me when I read it.
It's something that I've been, so this album at least, thinking about, and just when as long as life keeps happening, dreams are something that will come up, and sometimes they end up being fulfilled, and sometimes they end up just being something that's crushed. And in Danish, drømmeknus or dream crush is translated into drømmeknus, and the knus part is has two meanings. It can both be a kind of a hug, and it can also be something that is like it crushes you. And that was kind of what we we felt that kind of encapsulated all the things that we want this album to be about. So it's just it's not just that dreams are good to have, but it's also that it's kind of a source of I guess not necessarily agony, but because you're always looking towards the future, and you're always hoping that something will end up happening, or something that can become better. And then when that happens, you maybe get a brief moment of enjoyment, and then you start looking for the next things to dream about. And I think when I feel very old about talking about having children and so on, but again, it's kind of when that happens, and you still kind of maybe you want to still make music and tour, but you find out that there are these other elements in your life that kind of make those dreams or plans very difficult to happen, because it's nice to have kids, of course, but it's also as a musician you also want, for example, tour. It's just one example, for example, to give you a sense of it. So it could also be like kind of maybe figuring out sort of what you're able to do in your life, where maybe earlier you thought you could do it all, but then you end up realizing that it's not going to work out just as I had hoped for, in a sense. So I guess, and that's perhaps the pessimistic take on it. But I think more importantly, at least the way I think about it, is that you have to sort of be more present in where you're at right now, and be sort of focusing on that, instead of thinking about the future and all the things you're hoping for, in a sense. I hope that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense, and it's again, it's beautiful. Something I'm going to hit on a lot in this interview is balance, and that's
Yeah.
ultimately what it comes down to. You know, again, between the harsh vocals and the light vocals, the instrumentation, the messaging, like all of it, everything about this band, even down to again the band name with the, you know, what you love about a moth versus what you hate about a moth, like everything about it is balance. And yeah, like that's the one vibe I get across this whole band, which is fantastic.
Thank you very
Um,
much, and I think that's also yeah what we're trying to do, sort of sonically and since us also lyrically, I can't put words into Kim's mouth, of course, but at least for this record, it's definitely also sort of a lyrical theme.
yeah, for sure. Um, there's also another part of the press release that also kind of really struck a chord with me. Specifically, that it mentions that the album was informed by a series of life events and that the album offers the opportunity to worship at whatever psychic temple that resonates the most. I obviously love the concept of this too, because like artists can write songs and listeners take completely different meanings away from those songs than were not originally intended. I'm curious as to like that specific wording of like the psychic temple that resonating the most with people. Is that kind of the idea of it, of like we're going to write a song about this event, but this may apply to your situation, and how you take it is up to you because it is so subjective?
So I think for you and Diorama, it was very much sort of based on some of Kim's experiences, both with regards to he came out of a sort of a Christian cult background and had sort of a lot of questions regarding his faith and losing his faith. So that's a lot of what that record is about. But again, we always strive to kind of, or he always kind of strives to write not as as specific or as what do you call it? It has to be kind of ambiguous in the sense that you know that when you hear it or read it, it's not just you can like pinpoint, okay, that this is what it's about, but more that it's a sort of a sense of either a how what do you call it? It's
It
a
almost
sense
works
of
in a blue like a blueprint in a way.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's not sort of very descriptive or specific in terms of what it's referencing to, but more than like a state of mind or an idea or a concept or something that you can like pour yourself into as a listener and kind of associate with and feel something towards.
Yeah. We'll get a bit more into the songs now, obviously, but before I get into the more of the unreleased ones, there's three songs that are currently out right now. The first single was Garland, that dropped back in October. Young was then next in November, and then Crush just dropped last week. Um, a lot of the kind of YouTube stuff and stuff in general I've been reading is that these, like Crush in particular, is getting a lot of love online, and I think that's probably one of my favorite songs from the record. Does the band sort of discuss internally when you are writing music where it sits in the discography of like, you know, we know this is some of the best stuff we've ever made, or like how do you guys have those conversations?
Yeah, and it's a long process going back and forth and discussing. And if you saw our messenger thread and you could listen in on our band meetings, it would be sort of it can be tense sometimes to negotiate where something fits. But I think we of course also had some feedback from Nuclear Blast. We think that this works really well, and of course they've listened to a lot of music, so I think it's a good idea to listen to their experience. But we kind of had we ended up uh, with a I guess it's also just sort of a gut feeling that you think okay this will work out great as an opener. And for example, Dream, the first track on the record is written pretty much as that. As an opener to the record, so it couldn't really fit anywhere, at least not in my head. And but then kind of the rest of it is up for grabs, and then we sort of discuss, okay, well, is there a song that could like fit in the middle and give a breather? And then yeah, so in that sense, it's a lot of going back and forth, and of course also kind of highlighting what we think is some of the very best. As a songwriter, of course, I think that all of it is very, very, very good and the best. So in that sense, also it's difficult for me. So sometimes I kind of try to just to stay a little bit out of it. And I think Ken, our drummer, has a really good sense of how things should be kind of paced on a record as well as a set for a concert.
Yeah. And we've obviously talked about this a little bit before, but again, the balance between the instrumentation, the vocals, and all of that. Like, I thought when I listened to this the first couple of times, because again, I didn't really know much about the band, I thought you guys had two vocalists because there was no
Yeah,
way that I was like, there's no way this is the same person hitting all of these vocal lines, especially in such quick succession on some of the tracks. Um, Again, like when you're sort of writing, how do you like, do you kind of look at, okay, cool, this could be a little heavier or this could be a little quieter, or like, again, how do you sort of balance that? Because I feel that that's something that carries through the album is like, you'll have one song, and I think it was, I can't remember what song it was. I've actually got the thing up in front of me here. I think it was Favor, or it might have been a former Blueprint. The start of it
yeah.
is very quiet and very sort of chill, and then all that happens is that the vocals come in over the top, and it's almost like the tone of the whole song changes, but the instrumentation doesn't.
I think when we on your, and a lot of this is also it has to do with how Kim has developed as a musician or a vocalist. Um, I don't really think that when he initially started out in the band, was thinking of doing clean vocals. So it was kind of it's been a process of kind of slowly. Um, I like to have as many tools available in songwriting as possible. So it's kind of been a slow process of convincing him that he can actually do it, and sort of encouraging him to practice it and develop it and so on. And that it actually happened on Diorama because he had done a lot of like placeholders where he thought, okay, here we could do a feature and maybe here. And then when we went into the studio, the producer that we had, Tua Madsen, he asked him, why don't you just do it yourself? And yeah, so he did it in the studio on Diorama, and that worked out great. And then we thought, hey, on the next record we could use that even more to our advantage, and that also meant that I could, write some verses or some parts of music that were maybe more geared towards, having a clean vocal, and that would give that space for the clean vocal, and yeah.
Hmm. There's one song also in like, I've got a couple of songs here in particular I really want to talk about, but I feel like out of the entire record, besides Crush, the one song that hasn't been released yet, which I feel is the best song on the whole album, is the opener, Dream.
Yeah.
It's sort of, yeah, it's my favorite. So I'm a big fan. I listen to a bit of everything, and I don't know what it was, but I got like Opeth vibes from that song almost. And but also then not at the same time, because the opening of that song is very slow, it's very long, it's drawn out, it's like atmospheric and almost to a degree cinematic, like, but I feel that that song is a mission statement as to this is what this album is, because it has everything on that song through the rest of the record. So when it came to picking that song in particular to open the album, like what was the process of the band picking what was going to open the album? Because then I feel it goes very well into the second track, which then has that kind of instant bang, we're here.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, it's almost written to be the opener. So I think maybe it's one of the last songs that we actually wrote for the record. Can't remember quite sort of the history with it, but it's written specifically as an opener. And I think with regards to sort of references and our inspirations for it, it's sort of just I wanted something that I think that's also Storm for Your, and also Factura for Diorama is also kind of in the same sort of kind of the same thing, that it starts up slowly and builds up towards a sort of a release and the gratification, if you will. And I kind of like that way of doing album openers. Sort of slowly easing into it. Um, and I like, not necessarily having a clear structure for the track so that it's not like a normal verse, chorus, middle part. That it kind of never loops back in a sense. So it's just like it's just a stream of music that comes flying, and then it leads into the record. Um, so it's sort of a, I don't know, like a ramp into the to the record, if you will. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it does, because that's what you've just said literally describes the track. Like
Yeah,
that's the best way I can think to probably describe it. It's just a stream of consciousness until and I'm not gonna I'm out of respect, I'm not gonna butcher the name, but how do you say the name of the second song?
Small Felice.
Small Felice. There we go. So
Yeah,
again,
good.
like they sort of bleed in well together. And again, it's sort of the stream of consciousness that then leads into a more traditionally structured song. But Dream also doesn't feel like an intro track where songs in that spot maybe might feel like them. So yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Um, Now I am curious about how you guys sort of self-define genre-wise, because I
Mm,
feel that you guys are one of the most varied genre bands out there, in that you kind of do everything. Like the record and this one as well as the past has got elements of black metal to shoegaze. I sense some blues in there. There's some 90s alt rock, some kind of Smashing Pumpkins kind of stuff. Um, does the idea of kind of genre boundaries exist to you when you guys write? Or are you just like, we just want to make something that just sounds fucking awesome?
yeah, pretty much. I think that encapsulates it very well. I am when I write music, I just want it to sound cool, and I know that I've kind of struck gold when it's something that I wanna listen to, so that I can go around listening to the demos for days and kind of brainstorm about what to come next. So whenever I do that with a just two pieces of music of like a demo, or just 30 seconds of a demo, I know that I've got something that I want to keep developing in a sense. And I again, our motto in Mølle is that we can do whatever we want. So um, so there's no real sort of constraints on it, other than our, of course, personal tastes in a sense. So it's not like we want to do like techno in put that into the music or something like that. So it's always sort of based in our own love of music. And yeah, and a lot of the stuff that I've kind of think previously, again, I was of a late bloomer in metal, and I'm kind of I grew up with Smashing Pumpkins and alt rock in the '90s, and so that was kind of it's the things that I love, and also some of the reasons that I picked up the guitar, and I kind of wanted to also make that let that flow in the record. Uh, so in that sense, I think it's also natural for us to do it in that sense. And I don't want to be sort of confined to writing the same album more than once, and trying to do a your part too, in a sense. So it always has to be like a development in a sense, both in terms of how the music sounds, but also in how we develop as musicians and hopefully become better and writing songs and playing our instruments. And that could also be a part of it.
Yeah. I've got two more questions here. I know we're kind of pressed for a little bit of time, but I
No
wanted,
worries.
there's one song here that I want to really shout out, which is again, Dream is probably my favorite. My other favorite was Favor.
Yeah.
Again, that's a one where like it has a very long sort of intro. There's not many lyrics in it, but then out of nowhere, there's this massive guitar solo that gets ripped at the end, which I went back and I listened to that, I think about maybe 15 times, just the solo, because I love it. What what inspired the guitar solo there, considering the rest of the record doesn't really have them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm glad that you asked it, because we our previous guitarist Frederick left the band last year around in the early winter maybe, and we then asked Sigurd, who's been doing a lot of sort of stand-in shows with us, to become a permanent member of the band. And so that's actually one of the first things that he did for the band, was record that solo uh, here, actually in my home studio here. So yeah, and he had an sort of an idea. We talked about what it could be, and I gave him some feedback, and we kind of he nailed that in a couple of hours. And he has some other skills than I have as a guitarist, and sort of combining forces with him in that
Mm.
sense, I really think worked out, and it's a standout solo because it's also not the way that I would do a guitar solo. But I think it worked out really well, and it definitely brings that track up another notch.
Yeah, it's one of my. I think it's one of my favorite moments from the record. Like, because the whole album feels like to a degree a series of moments, but that solo kicks in again. The vocals sort of come down, and then there's sort of a little bit of a break with instrumentation, and then the solo picks up where you would think the
Yeah,
vocals would kick in. So yeah, again, I think it's one of the best moments on the whole record, and it's a great addition for sure, especially on an album too. Like I said, that doesn't really have guitar solos on it. It stands out.
yeah,
Um, Last question I've got for you. And this is more like I say this jokingly, of course, but I've got a little bit of a production gripe with the end of Mimic because the first time I heard that, I felt I was going insane because there's a switch on the when I had my headphones on, and there's a switch on the thing at the end where it kind of flicks between the ears and then immediately kicks into Crush. I felt like anxiety in that moment when that happened. So like was there kind of like a tension sort of thing you were building with the outro to that to go into Crush? Because it's cool. I really liked it. It was the first time I heard it. I was like, whoa, this is tripping me out.
yeah. So it's the after the drum solo on Mimic,
Yeah, so
and
it moves from ear to ear. So like you'll hear like da da here, then da da here, and it's all in the production. Like you guys aren't just doing it and just switching the mics or whatever. Like whoever's
no,
produced
and
there's this like anxiety of it, and like it felt weird, and I loved it because I was like, because then the intro to Crush kicks in, and immediately I'm just like, whoa, let's go, like yeah, it
yeah.
rips. But yeah, I don't know if you guys had heard that or noticed it, but the first time I heard it, I was like, whoa, this is tripping me out.
I haven't really noted it, and I've listened to it quite a bit, but so it's not something that will kind of sort of jump out on at me. But maybe that's because I'm a bit deaf to it now right now after doing listening to it for I don't know how many
Yeah,
hundreds of hours. But it's a lot of that your production on specifically the drum part is we pretty much gave Ken, our drummer,
yeah.
free range to do whatever he wanted with that, and he had kind of a vision with it, and yeah, so probably some of that is what you're hearing and giving you anxiety. So sorry about
It
that.
no, that's good. No, listen, it was fun because it kind of like again, like it ramps and it ramps and it sort of again the production of the switching ears, it tripped me out a little bit. But then, like I said, kind of like how Dream goes into again, I can't remember how to say the second song, but how they sort of bleed together, I guess, in the production. Mimic does that with Crush, and I just again
Yeah.
immediately feel this sort of snap of like we're in it now, and this is we're going home essentially. So
Yeah, and that's specifically what we wanted. We wanted it to kind of build tension with the drum solo, so that it would kind of, of course, follow from Mimic, but then again build up, and then you kind of had that snap, and then you're in Crush in the sense. So I think that's a good description, and I wish I had come up with that description.
I definitely felt it, that's for sure. Well, Merle's third record, Dream Crush, will drop everywhere on January 30th on Nuclear Blast. As I said, I think this is one of my favorite albums so far this year. I've listened to a few already, and this has definitely been a favorite. I can't wait for people to get on it. Hopefully, as well, as I said earlier, I hope this leads to some form of tour in Australia for you guys because again, I need Favor live. I need to hear that solo. There's certain stuff on this album that I would love to hear live, plus the old stuff. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out and yeah, having a chat. And I can't wait for this to get out.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. And I hope again it's on our list as well to be able to travel to Australia and doing some gigs there. That would be amazing.